Hello YouTube, this is Chuck. It's Sunday, May 26, 2024, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon or so, and as you can see, I'm out here in the van, and if the lighting looks a little different, it's because I got side doors open because it was a little warm in here when I got here, so I rolled the window down and get some air to move through. But got a couple of videos to make for you today, and first one is actually going to be a firefighter story, and I hinted at it in my community page post this morning. So the story's a little bit long and convoluted, and I'm going to try not to make the video too long, but I'm also going to insert a couple pictures in here, and the only way I can do that is to stop and start the video. So I'll try not to make it too jerky or try not to have any awkward pauses in there, but if you notice it shift around a little bit, that's kind of what's going on. So anyway, to tell you the story, yesterday evening, I got a call from a guy who I hadn't talked to in probably 10 years. And he lives in a little rural fire district just outside the Metro Phoenix area, down in Maricopa County. And a long time ago, I tried to help him out with some stuff. But I hadn't, as I said, I hadn't talked to him in a long time. But I still had his number in my phone, and he still had my number in his phone, apparently. And so he called me up just out of the blue, and we exchanged pleasantries for a little bit, and then he told me, he says, the reason why I wanted to call you tonight is because I want to thank you for saving our community. And I thought, well, what in the world do you mean by that? So I asked him about it. And so he told me. But in order to tell you, I've got to start with some backstory. Well, this little rural fire district down there is actually in the desert, and it's made up of homes on acreage, and it's a fairly exclusive area, and some of the homes are pretty big, and pretty big means pretty expensive. So the fire districts in Arizona, of course, are an official government entity, and they have a elected board to oversee their operation. And so in this case, what they had done is, their job, of course, is to make sure the community has services. And so what they had done is they had contracted with the nearby Indian reservation for the tribal fire department to provide their services for them. They didn't operate a fire department on their own. And they had done this for quite a while, and the tribe agreed to send a single engine out there with 500 gallons of water and a crew of 3. Well, that's pretty limited in what they can do and that. And so it probably never really was a good arrangement to start with, but anyway, the tribe kind of put them on notice that they had some new members of their tribal council getting elected, and they were talking about not renewing their agreement, and which would kind of leave them out there by themselves. Well, the tribe, they have every right to do that, and they basically had been providing services for this fire district at a bargain basement rate. So the fire district, not knowing for sure what they're going to do, they thought maybe they ought to start their own department. And so that's where I got involved in it. And I got a phone call, and they said, would you come down and talk to us and maybe give us some counsel on how to do this? And so when I worked I was working as a fire chief in another district at the time. And when I was working chiefing, as we call it, and somebody asked me for that, I just go do it and figure it was part of my job. Later, when I was between gigs, and I considered myself a consultant, which is sometimes a nasty word, but anyway, then I would charge for my services, and usually not near enough. But every department I ever worked for, we were always trying to do a size 10 job with a size 4 budget, and so I was kind of used to doing that. I've never worked in a big department. I've never worked any place where we had any money. So, I told him I'd come down and talk to you. So I drove on down there, and I met with this guy named Tom, the guy that called me the other night. Beautiful, beautiful house. And Tom's actually an airline pilot for a major airline. And I asked him about that last night on the phone. He said, asked him if he's retired yet. And he says, no, he's got about a year to go, and he's counting the days. And he's actually on a flight today somewhere. I don't remember where he said he was going, someplace back east, I believe. But anyway, so I went down there and I talked to them, and they were all they were going to start their own volunteer fire department. That was kind of the direction they wanted to go. And one of the guys down there, kind of a hot rodder or gearhead or something like that, and he'd actually went out and bought an old fire truck. And so they were going to use his truck, and it was, the truck at that time was a 70s vintage truck, and and I went and looked at it, and it was basically plumb wore out. But anyway, that was what they were going to do, and they were going to get some people to agree to be volunteer firefighters and all this kind of stuff, and they were going to start their own department. And so they asked me what I thought about that, and so I asked them a couple of questions about their assessed valuation and how much money they could raise through taxes, and basically I kind of was a wet blanket on their idea. And the reason why is because starting a fire department is a lot more complicated than you might think it is. Number one is it's a 24/7, 365 operation. One truck's not enough because that truck at some point in time is going to have to go in the shop. And so you got to have at least two, so you got to back up. And then basically, if you want to be part of the overall fire protection system, well, that involves a lot of radios and a lot of, tying into the dispatch system. And it also means that as part of their automatic aid system down there, it means that you're running outside your area a lot because you're going to help other people because you expect them to come and help you. But one of the big things about that area is they would have inherited about 25 miles of a major divided highway going right through their district and up north, coming up toward Payson. And they would have spent an awful lot of time on highway related calls, wrecks and roadside fires and all this kind of stuff. So they were thinking, well, we won't do anything unless there's a fire. Well, and the other thing too is modern fire departments provide medical services, and that's a whole nother ballgame. So basically, I told them some things they hadn't thought about liability insurance and about 24/7 staffing and about dispatching and about always having enough people there to and the cost of what new vehicles cost and all this kind of stuff. And I just flat told them, I said, I don't think that you can generate enough money to do this right. And when it comes down to liability, it's an affluent area out there, and that some of those people got their lawyers on speed dial. And so if something bad happens, you better have pretty good insurance or you're likely to get your butt sued. And they even talked about, well, what happens if the guy that owned the fire truck, he said, well, what happens if I just kind of go help my neighbors if I need to? And I said, well, if you become the de facto fire department and you happen to be out of town someday or your truck doesn't start or something like that, once again, these folks got their lawyers on speed dial, and you could end up finding yourself on the wrong end of a lawsuit for not providing the services that they have come to expect. So no, I don't recommend that you do that. If you want to have an old fire truck to play with and maybe give the kids a ride around the neighborhood once in a while, that's one thing. But once you become a fire department, you become a fire department. And it's kind of like trying to be a little bit pregnant. It doesn't work. You either are or you aren't. And so basically I talked them out of it. So in talking with them, they agreed. They understood where I was coming from. And so they said, well, so what do you recommend that we do? And I said, well, I recommend that you keep the agreement that you got for as long as they'll do it. And if they won't do it anymore, then move to the next community down the road, which is a town, and try to get an agreement with them. But it's probably going to be the same type of agreement. So another facet of this whole thing was that this community, as I said, they're pretty large homes on acreage, a beautiful desert setting, very nice. And but one of the things they don't have is they don't have a water system. And some of the people spend a whole lot of money punching in wells, but other people there hauled water. They put water tanks in underground, and they had a big truck come in there's different companies that'll do that, deliver water to you. And so water was a very, very tight commodity. So they said, well, we'd like to figure out a way to have some water here for fire protection, so how do you do it? Well, they thought they were going to put it in a big tank somewhere, and so the fire truck could go fill up and shuttle water back and forth to any fire they might have. I said, well, you can do that, and that might work. And they were kind of concerned about, they didn't want a big ugly tank sticking out there. And I said, well, that's doable. It's a hilly area. You could get a piece of property. You could basically recess the tank into the side of the mountain. You could paint it to match the surrounding soil. Basically, it's a decomposed granite base they have there, and kind of a tan color. And you could paint it that color. You could even hire a muralist to come put a desert scene on the side of it, and it would all blend in and hide, and you wouldn't even be able to see it. But that involves buying a lot, putting in a tank. They were amazed to learn that if you're going to put in a good quality tank, you're talking about roughly $1 a gallon. So, they said, well, how big does the tank need to be? And I said, well, you should plan for 1,000 gallons a minute for 2 hours. That's 120,000 gallons. That's $120,000 for a tank, plus a pump system to load the fire truck and all the other stuff that goes along with that. So that was pretty expensive as well. So they said, well, what do you suggest we do? And I said, well, how many of your people around here have swimming pools? And they said, well, quite a few of them. I said, well, there's your water source. What you need to do is you need to, first of all, contact all those people and ask them, get them to sign a paper saying that it's okay for you to use the water out of their swimming pool if there's a fire. And then you need to set up some way to support whatever fire department responds with a water source. That's the biggest thing you need in a rural area to fight a fire is water. That's the bullets for your gun. And they, big departments spend a whole lot of money on tanker trucks, and tanker trucks, the biggest ones can only carry about 3,000 gallons of water because water's heavy. And, and in order to make your truck not be overweight, you have to be, pretty careful not to put too big a tank on one. So anyway, so I said, and then you got to figure out a way to get the water out of the swimming pool and provide it to the fire department that arrives. And so I suggested a way to do that. And I said, get us, you could have a group of your people there, your residents, that could be volunteers. They're not actually fighting fire. They're in a support role. And their support role is to set up a water source for the firefighters that come. And so I suggested that they get a little trailer and get maybe a couple of them and set it up with some pumps and some hose and go to each one of these places where there's a swimming pool and figure out how to get in there and set up your pump. Now, you're talking that most of your people are going to be retired folks or possibly the stay-at-home moms or something, because maybe the husbands are all away at work during the day. So you need to make it simple. You need to make everything light enough that it can be operated and simple enough to understand it, and so that anybody can, with minimal training, can set this operation up. So what I suggested is that there was a company that made little floating pumps. And so that with a floating pump, you don't need a draft hose. And all you got to do is hook the output hose to it and kind of start up and throw it in the swimming pool, and it's done. It's working. It ain't going anywhere. It's a little trickier if you got running water, but swimming pools aren't running water. So these pumps they call them suitcase fire pumps, and they're not real heavy. They're kind of heavy, but not compared to everything else. So basically, I suggested that they put several of these, maybe 4 to 6 of them, on a trailer with enough hose and some kind of a manifold that the fire truck could hook into that would serve kind of as a portable fire hydrant. And that they practice with this to where they could do it with minimal, do it in minimal time. Go around to all their different swimming pools to make sure that they could have access to all these swimming pools to do this, and to maintain that and to train periodically on it. So they did that. They set that system up. Well, how long ago was this? It's like 10 years ago. It was probably 15 years ago when I first started working with them a little bit. And about 10 years ago is when they set this thing up. Well, they trained with it pretty regularly for a while, and then, people got older, and some people passed away, and some people moved away, and new people came, and so gradually they quit doing it anymore, but the trailer and everything was still there. And I gave them some hints about how, run the pumps dry in gasoline so you don't have bad gasoline in them, so they will start and run, and little stuff like that, just suggestions. But these little pumps, and I also told them these little pumps, if the fire was right there at the house where the swimming pool was, you could hook a nozzle right directly on the hose off the fire pump and fight it from their own swimming pool. But anyway, well, they'd gone years and years without having a fire. Well, guess what? Yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, the wind blowing like heck down there, and they had a fire. And the fire was in a detached garage shop on somebody's property. And they said they thought it was started by, he was grinding with a grinder, and somewhere the sparks from the grinder got into something and started the place on fire. Well, the tribal fire department no longer served him. but the next town down sent an engine out. Here again, single engine. I don't know whether they had a 3 or 4 man crew, but it had 500 gallons of water. But what happened is that one of the original guys that was originally involved in all this remembered about that trailer setup and knew where it was, knew how to set it up. He grabbed a couple of his neighbors and gave them a quick on-the-job training on setting this thing up. They had a house nearby that had a swimming pool, and they went over there and they hooked up those pumps, threw them in the pool, got the water source working, went over and told the fire incident commander, hey, here's your water. The incident commander took a look at it and said, holy cow, that's great. And they ended up controlling the fire. They lost the building of origin, but they were having like 35, 40 mile an hour wind gusts in the desert with dead grass all over the place and brush. And they were able to hold that fire, and all they did is lose the building of origin. And where it was at, if that thing would have got running through the desert, it could have burned several houses. And what that showed to me was that original system worked. It might not, it might have had some little glitches because they didn't keep it up the way they should have, but it worked. They had their water source set up. It worked exactly the way that we originally planned it to work. They provided water for the fire department, and they ended up pumping 10,000 gallons of water out of that swimming pool to control that fire. Now, Tom wasn't home at the time. He got back when all this was going on, but he thought about me, and he thought that was my idea. And later on that evening, after it was all over with, he wanted to call me up and tell me that. And by golly, that meant a lot to me. I still remembered I'd been down there and doing it, but I hadn't talked to anybody down there for years. I didn't know, what they'd been doing, what had transpired and how they were handling their fire protection needs. I drive by there, not every time I go to the valley, because the valley is the Phoenix area, that's what we call it. And because we normally go to the East Valley, and there's another road we take, but drive by there quite frequently. And so anyway, that's kind of the story, and that's kind of the background. This was run a little bit long, but I kind of had to do that. Now here at the end of the video, I'm going to plug in a little short video he sent me and a still picture of that burning garage, so that you can see what we're talking about. And people think the fire not going to do much in the desert, but I can tell you there's a lot of invasive grasses and a lot of desert scrub, and especially when you got it's dry down there now, it's hot down there now, and when you get some wind behind it, that fire can run through that desert just about as fast as you can run. And little fire get big real fast. They just had one about 25 miles northwest of there that ended up getting up to about 14,000 acres before they got a handle on it, and it took them about a week. This one here, they controlled it pretty quick, and they gave credit to that water system to do that, and the fact that trailer system still worked with the portable pumps still worked, and basically gave the firefighters that were there weren't very many of them there, but it gave them the bullets for their guns in order to be able to put that fire out and control that fire. So I'm going to plug that little video's clip. It's real short, and the still picture in here at the end. But for right now, let me tell you, as I always do, take care of each other, love each other, take care of yourself. It's beautiful days. Heat wave's coming. It's probably 80. When I opened up the van, the thermometer's up pretty close to the ceiling up here, so it gets pretty hot up where the thermometer's at, but it said it was 107 in here. So I opened it up and let some air blow through here before I tried to sit, and I've got another video I got to make right after this one. But so until I talk to you again, stick around, watch that little video clip and that picture. But for right now, I'm going to tell you, peace out for now.